Is the label of alcoholic hurting people from getting sober? I have Recovery Life contributor Shauna Vick on the line to discuss this new article I found on Psychology Today about questioning whether we should stop using the word alcoholic with people pursuing or in recovery. How you doing today, Shauna?
I am quite well. Thank you, Damon. Thanks for having me on today.
Thank you so much for joining us. Interesting article here, Shauna. The whole idea of the word alcoholic in sobriety and in recovery. You know, this Psychology Today article kind of points that it could be hurting people. That stigma of the word alcoholic could be hurting people from getting sober. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I do believe that it could be hurting people getting sober, and yet I personally identify with the term. When I think of how it may hurt people getting sober, the stigma happened a long time ago. The word alcoholic, really, the etymology of the word means of or pertaining to alcohol. By 1820, it was already defined as public drunkenness or drunkenness. So the stigma started back in, the 1800s, that if you were publicly drunk or habitually drunk, you were an alcoholic. So that's what we're fighting. Your question to me was, is it preventing people from getting treatment? I strongly believe this to be the case because, Damon, if we look at alcohol use, I personally like to think of it on a continuum from use, maybe social, the odd time, have the odd glass of wine, to misuse, maybe some binge drinking, to abuse, more habitual binge drinking, to dependence, where people are coming home from work every day and they just can't make it through the night without having a drink because they don't know how else to relax. And then all the way it increases to the addiction. But everybody who drinks or would question their relationship with alcohol automatically thinks of the alcoholic, who's the addict, who's the one who is suffering tremendously from this. And they don't identify with that. Whereas if we stopped using the term alcoholic and looked at, like the article says, person first language, a person with alcohol use disorder, or, I could coin mine, a person somewhere on the continuum of alcohol use, then people may be more willing to seek treatment.
Yeah, I see. Shauna, I see that. Now, here's where I think the controversy lies with this. Like, if you've been sober long term, like I have been, right? Like if you've come through a 12-step program, one of the first things they tell you is you have to identify as an alcoholic, right? So it's almost, for a lot of people who pursue 12-step programs or even therapy, right? Even therapy. I know that in some therapy, it's getting to that thing where you're actually saying, hey, I'm an alcoholic. You're actually saying that word. And there does seem to be some sort of breakthrough sometimes for people to get help. I do see, as you pointed out, though, that it could prevent people from really wanting to do that, because there is, even in 2023, Shauna, there is such a stigma to the word alcoholism. But I think the interesting thing you said is the spectrum, right? Not all alcoholics are the same. People with alcohol use disorder are different parts on the spectrum. Can you talk about that real quick? Because I think that's an important point. It could hurt people who maybe they're problem drinkers. They're not really, quote, traditional alcoholics, but they're on that path.
Right. And I mean, with the pandemic in our rearview mirror, people are emerging from the pandemic having changed their relationship to alcohol. So a lot of people have lost their off switch. Many more people were day drinking. Alcohol sales were up 247% within the first 9 months of the pandemic. So we have a lot of people who may be questioning their relationship with alcohol. Like you, I identify more on the end, because I was habitually drunk. When I was in my disease, I was habitually drunk. I was an alcoholic. I can claim that. And, the interesting thing in the 12-step program, in their book, it talks that it's a program of recovered alcoholics. It's to show people how to recover from that hopeless state of mind and body. So, even taking it outside of just the term I'm an alcoholic. I like to say I'm a recovered alcoholic because I've worked so hard to heal so many other areas of my life. And that's where the hope is. Now, people in different parts of the continuum, say someone was coming out of the pandemic and they turned to day drinking. So they found that they, instead of drinking on the weekends, now they actually drink every day. And they've identified that they have a disordered relationship with alcohol, and they go to their doctor. What can I do with it? Well, we need our medical professionals to say, hey, you don't have to hit rock bottom to want to change your relationship with alcohol.
Yes,
And yet,
exactly. And I think that's the big thing, right? Because Shauna, I think obviously no one wants to stop people from getting sober because of the term. And I guess the real crux of the situation here is, does the word alcoholic still have a stigma in 2023? And unfortunately, I have to say, I think it does. I think it does. If I said, hey, I had depression, I think depression has less of a stigma than alcoholic.
I completely agree. I think we've done a great job to break the stigma from mental wellness and mental health and depression and other mental health disorders. I think that has been, we've made it more acceptable within the media. However, alcoholic continues to be a real strong stigma, and it prevents people from getting well. And, how do we change that in movies and media? Are we moving as a entire society towards using the words alcohol use disorder, or instead of addict, opioid use disorder, or substance use disorder, I think is the term that would encompass both. I don't see that being used, that person first language. I don't see that being used as much as, the portrayal of an alcoholic in a movie. It's not just someone who drinks heavily. It's someone who drinks and falls down and loses their job and loses everything. So we have to work harder to break that stigma.
Well, one of the things we learn, obviously, in Shauna, in recovery at the beginning, is that the amount of alcohol that you drink doesn't necessarily make you an alcoholic. The amount of it's what happens when you drink alcohol that makes you an alcoholic, right? I love how you're talking about the relationship with alcohol and about your relationship with alcohol and what does that look like in questioning this. I think the whole recovering out loud movement has been really good to kind of destigmatize alcoholism, because they see people in recovery. I mean, I'm going to tell you personally, it wasn't until the last couple of years where I actually recovered out loud that I told people that I was in recovery, right? Because look, I was in a career for many years. It did have a stigma. It did have, even though I had decades of sobriety, continuous sobriety, it has a stigma as if there's something wrong with you. There's some sort of moral failing. And I think some sort of character defect on you, right? And I think now the more science evolves and we find out the whole biochemistry part of alcoholism and drug addiction, right? I think it's demystifying that a little bit and hopefully bringing it out of the shadows and making it less of a stigma.
Yes. And I love the Recover Out Loud movement. It is so important because you see, like you, a successful businessman who's attractive, has a family, can, lead this great life. But wait a second, what? You were an alcoholic? Really? And so that helps people to say, I've seen one campaign of this is what recovery looks like. And you look and you think, gosh, there's no way they could have been an opioid use, suffer from opioid use disorder. And, one of my favorite quotes is, when we recover loudly, we keep others from dying silently. It's really our job in recovery to work to break that stigma, because too many people are dying silently. They don't realize different levels of treatment that they can seek to heal.
Perfect. Shauna, McKenna, Vick, thank you so much for coming on today, talking about this important topic. And I think final thoughts from you, Shauna. Obviously, whether you identify as an alcoholic or not, you shouldn't let that stop you from trying to pursue sobriety, right?
Oh, absolutely. You can just want to change your relationship with alcohol. We do it with food. We go on a diet. We want to change our relationship with food, want to change our relationship with our body. We start to exercise, hire a personal trainer. Want to change our relationship with alcohol. We hire a recovery coach. We attend recovery meetings. We talk to our doctor. What are my options? So yes, I absolutely.
Shauna McKenna Vick, thanks so much.